God damn. That 5.1 ain't no joke. Making my ears hurt. Nia says, welcome back, thank you. That hotspot uses a lot of battery, and we had got it up to 6%, and it had dropped to 4%. And so I thought I would turn the screen off, but turning the screen off turned the hotspot off. So let's get back to what we were doing, y'all. I apologize for that. Should have left it alone. I should have left it alone. That's my fault. I shouldn't have messed with nothing. I should have just left it alone. Uh-oh.
Watch.
Can y'all see this? Yes, you can. All right. Is that it?
Great Danes saved the day when a strange man walked right into their home. This happened in broad daylight off of Northwest 6th Street. Tracy says she heard her side door open and thought it was her older son. Instead,
I looked up and came face to face with a stranger.
Tracy was home with her younger son, Nathaniel, who's blind. He had no idea what was going on until he heard his mom scream. And it turns out he wasn't the only one surprised to hear Tracy's yell.
The instant that I screamed, Dubai understood that that person was not welcome here.
Surveillance video shows the suspect walking into the home, even petting the dog before walking further down this hallway. Tracy says she heard some shuffling. She came around the corner and saw this man, Robert Ward. She screamed, and moments later, Dubai jumped into action.
He immediately did an about face, literally, and started after the gentleman. And he escorted him out by the rear end with his teeth.
She watched as Ward ran away, only to come back moments later in the back of a patrol car so Tracy could positively identify him for police.
Officers that were responding to the scene spotted the man in the area walking in the neighborhood, took him into custody.
Now, one day after the break-in, Tracy, Nathaniel, and even Dubai are still shaken up and trying to comprehend how to move on.
It changes everything. It changes how you feel. It changes your security. It changes your level of confidence at that moment.
In Oklahoma City, Emily Akins, Oklahoma's News 4.
Hoochie Woochie did his job. All right, CBS News.
How does a fighter start?
Can y'all see it? Yes, you can. Check the chat. Oh, we got two chats. We gotta get rid of one of them. Okay, this is the I hope I got rid of the right chat. We'll get rid of both of them. You gotta worry about it.
Day of deadlines as the vote count continues and Joe Biden's lead continues to grow in Pennsylvania and Georgia. Just now, at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the deadline has passed for mail-in ballots to arrive in Pennsylvania. You can see the vote count in Philadelphia here. All ballots that arrived before 5 will count unless they were clearly postmarked after Election Day. These ballots remain separated from the rest of the count. That leaves open the possibility of a legal challenge after the U.S. Supreme Court allowed them last month. As of our last update, less than 113,000 ballots remain in Pennsylvania. Biden currently leads by more than 14,000 votes after overtaking President Trump last night. In Georgia, military and overseas ballots are due by close of business today. We now know there are more than 8,000 ballots that were sent out but not yet returned. That is more than the margin of just 1,500 votes. But just because ballots have been distributed doesn't mean they'll all be counted. Cast rather. Overall, Joe Biden is sitting on a lead of 253 electoral votes to President Trump's 213. 270 are needed to win. Biden needs to win Pennsylvania, where he's now leading, or 2 of the 4 from Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, and North Carolina. President Trump must win Pennsylvania and at least 3 of those 4 states. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Zeke Miller, and Greg Bluestein join me now. Caitlin is CBSN's political reporter. She's following the vote count in Philadelphia. Zeke is a CBSN political contributor and a White House reporter for the Associated Press. And Greg is a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Welcome to you all. It is great to be with you on a Friday, not typically when we have red and blue, but I think we should all start with some deep breathing exercises, starting with me. Zeke, Arweja Jang is reporting right now on the mood inside the White House, saying that today it is somber, very empty, with several aides not showing up for work. But President Trump is going ahead full force with whatever legal options are still available. What are those options, Zeke, and do they look particularly hopeful for the president?
And we've seen a flurry of legal activity from the president. President Trump would have to win Pennsylvania. He has to win that. He has to win North Carolina. He has to win Georgia. Then he comes out west and he has to either win Arizona or Nevada, either or. You can see his number at 279. We've been saying this over and over again. The path is just longer and harder for the president. There are still a lot of votes out there. We want to make that point as well, but his path is tougher, George.
And he's only ahead in North Carolina. Thanks very much, Tom. Mary Bruce with the Biden campaign. And Mary, the Biden campaign waiting for these projections like everyone else, but we're going to hear from the former vice president either way?
George, I am told that we are still expected to hear Joe Biden come out and speak here tonight, but that he is not likely to declare victory until this race has been called. So that means it's possible we could be getting another status update from the former vice president. I suspect in that case, you would hear him continuing to project that growing confidence that we have been hearing over the past several days and continued calls for calm and patience. There's a sense within the Biden campaign tonight that this is really just a matter of when and not if. They are completely confident that Joe Biden will be the next president, but the win of all of this is clearly taking much longer than they had hoped. But George, they really don't want to get ahead of this. You have heard the vice president over the past several days urging his supporters to keep the faith as all of the votes are counted.
And of course, if enough projections do come out tonight, he will embrace the victory.
That is the sense that we have, George, that if he comes out, if the race has been called, that he is prepared to declare victory.
Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Cecilia Vega, don't expect to see President Trump tonight.
No, in fact, I don't think we officially will, given that what's called a lid at the White House has been called. All the journalists that cover the White House that day have been allowed to go home. The Trump team scaled back appearances today compared to yesterday when we saw this flurry of press conferences. They did, though, announce that they tapped longtime conservative activist David Bossie to lead the legal fight going ahead. The day's been spent behind the scenes with this legal team trying to figure out this strategy going forward. They are showing no signs of giving up, George. Both the campaign and the president still continuing to fuel this conspiracy theory about the election being stolen from them. The president on Twitter seeming to try to get ahead of any kind of announcement that we may be getting from Joe Biden. He tweeted that he should not wrongfully claim the office of the president. President Trump said, quote, "I could make that claim. Also, legal proceedings are just now beginning." You'll remember that very first night, late into election night, the president did essentially concede, saying that we did win this election. He's continuing to call for an end to counting votes that were cast legally. Those votes that just because they did come in after Election Day does not mean, of course, they were cast illegally. He's right now in the political fight for his life, George. He is hanging on. It seems at times his campaign is grasping at straws to keep this fight going. The president says he wants to take this all the way to the Supreme Court, and you will remember he said not too long ago he's not one that likes to lose. He's not one who wants to admit defeat.
Cecilia Vega, thanks very much. David Muir, 4 days into this, I guess a lot of Americans thinking the waiting is the hardest part.
Really is, and we tried to prepare Americans for this for really weeks, if not, well, more than a month out, that this could be a very long election, particularly if it's close. It's literally what we were watching play out on night 4. Right, we were at night 4.
Heading into
a month into this. I think it's important to remember, too, that both the Biden campaign and the Trump White House are watching this just as we are. It's not as though they have their hands on the numbers, the ballots, before it's released from, Allegheny County and from the county where Philadelphia is and these key areas, particularly in Pennsylvania, since that is the money state. President Trump is looking at the map that Tom Llamas just showed. I don't know if he's looking at our map or a map on another network or what have you, but he knows this is an uphill climb to try to catch up to Joe Biden at this point. He knows that the former vice president is on the cusp of the presidency. And I think the big task now is for Joe Biden. Obviously, he's not going to declare victory unless the networks call it tonight. But if and when he comes out, will he deliver a similar sort of appearance to what we saw the last time he came out? He talked about the pandemic first. He clearly is trying to signal that he's ready to assume the mantle of the presidency. He will lead this nation. And, I'm mindful that just, an hour or so ago, we were doing world news, and we did a piece also tonight, because we can't ignore this, the coronavirus pandemic. More than 140,000 new cases here in the U.S. We've seen this now for several days in a row in this country. It's not getting as much attention as it should, simply because we find ourselves in this 4-day presidential election. But whoever becomes the president will have to address this immediately, in addition to President Trump in the meantime, if it's not him.
That's right. Lindsey Davis, the president, will be president until January 20th, no matter what. This crisis is escalating by the day.
And you're right. And I think that so many people are focused on the election that they're forgetful. They're just not mindful of the fact that we are in the middle of this major crisis. And when we hear from the president, he's certainly not talking about coronavirus. He's talking about fraud and lawsuits. In the meantime, another 1,300 Americans died today from coronavirus. 23 states had their record number of cases. There are projections that there are going to be 250,000 Americans dead from this or more by Thanksgiving. We talked to one public health official today, and he said that we're probably at the worst moment of the pandemic so far. Every state is getting worse. We need a national plan. Nothing will change this trajectory if we don't change it. As you said, George, win or lose, he's responsible until Inauguration Day, January 20th at noon for this. Interestingly, it's actually almost 1 year to the day, January 21st, when the CDC first announced the first confirmed case of coronavirus in the United States.
Lindsey Davis, thanks. Christie, the silence from President Trump today, at least we haven't seen him before cameras, I think speaks volumes.
Well, I think it does, George, and I think there's a lot of people who are talking to the president, trying to talk to the president, if not getting to him, talking to the people around him about the way this process needs to work from here. I don't think he's quite ready to hear all that yet, but I think his silence today is in bitter reaction to, some of the reaction he got to the things he said yesterday. In the end, as I said before, you can't execute a legal attack without a legal strategy. And the problem here is that he doesn't have a strategy to get where he needs to get to through the legal path. And if you don't, that means the fight may be intense but short.
And Rahm Emanuel, what we're seeing play out in the Biden camp is what you've been talking about. He wants to embrace the victory without appearing presumptuous.
Yeah, I think they've got a decision to make, which is you get one shot at being in prime time. You just can't go out. I need you to stay really, 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 really calm. You can't do that. So he's got this, and he doesn't want to get in front and be presumptuous. And you got one shot at kind of making this announcement. So my guess, they're going to just wait until the networks, all of us collectively, and the states themselves, more importantly, who do the counting and do the lead, once that decision's been made and a period's been put at that sentence, the next chapter begins. And he can't kind of do that at this point. I think they're making a judgment call, and they don't want to get in front of it, but I think it's make certain steps as it relates to more economic briefings, come out and brief that without being presumptuous that then tweaks it in the wrong way. Right now, they have not missed the tone yet, and I don't think they want to make a mistake in that sense.
George, I really do think that they should really think this through, because if you go out there tonight and do that before this thing is called, you give everybody who thinks this is trying to be shoved through an opportunity to say, see, they're trying to rush it through. If you think we got to count all of them.
No, we're vigorously agree.
Count all of them.
Let me bring this to Sarah Fagan. And Sarah, it did seem like there would seem to be a consensus developing in the Republican Party, pushing back slightly against the president, giving him room to have legal challenges on the ballot, but without embracing his inflammatory claims about illegal voting.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of us care about our integrity, and right now, there's just not evidence. And I've talked to several people on the ground in these states, and their biggest complaint is that they're not being allowed to watch the vote counting, which is concerning. It raises a question as to why, but that's very different than wide-scale fraud, and there's yet to be evidence. And when you push people, they tend to kind of fall apart pretty quickly. You know, they back down pretty quickly. You know, I even said to one friend of mine, give me something. Give me some fact that is useful. And I didn't get one.
Meantime, Yvette, all through the day today, Joe Biden's leads did increase. His vote came home. If you would have told him at midnight on Tuesday, this is a result, I think his entire camp would have been elated.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there was some trepidation when the votes were coming in really, really slow. I think there were some folks who were concerned about Georgia. And we were hearing on the ground that Georgia was going to come through, and folks were like, we're not going to get Georgia. And so I think they're elated in part because Georgia is a signal, right? We knew Pennsylvania had some pathway, particularly after Michigan and Wisconsin came through, but Georgia felt like a stretch, particularly because North Carolina didn't come through. And so I think they are elated, one, because there are so many different paths, and also we can reflect on the future. Now we look at a future. We've got the Southwest as a potential for the future. We've got the Southeast as a potential. We already got Virginia several cycles ago, and now we've got many, many paths, I think, as a party to be able to win elections going forward.
Yvette, thanks very much. I want to bring in Rick Klein, our political director. Rick, vote counts actually always take a long time. One of the problems here is that all these states are so close, but try to bring people inside on why we're not getting final projections in these close states.
Yeah, the vote margin is one thing, but you look to see where the outstanding vote is. And in this case, it's fair to look at the outstanding vote and say, well, there's a lot of places that still have vote in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Nevada that actually are pretty good for Joe Biden. But the wild card here is becoming provisional ballots. And this is what happens when someone goes to the polls and there's some kind of confusion or issue with the ability to cast that ballot. Maybe their name isn't on the list. Maybe they forgot to bring ID. So they set those ballots aside. Usually they don't matter. But in this case, there's a huge mass of them that we're talking about. Maybe 100,000 in Pennsylvania, maybe another 68,000 or so we're estimating in Nevada. And normally you can assume those would go for the Democrats. But in this cycle, when President Trump was telling his own supporters vote in person, there are a lot of Republicans, we believe, that may have received the mail ballot and then gone to the polls anyway. And they would be casting that provisional ballot. So we just want to see more of those votes in addition to the outstanding vote in person in states like that before we make any kind of judgment.
Chair Moran, we've seen the Supreme Court step in for the first time since the election.
That's right. Excuse me. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who is the justice assigned to the Third Circuit, which includes Pennsylvania, he issued an order tonight instructing all the counties of Pennsylvania to segregate the ballots that arrived after Election Day. And as he says, in a secure, safe, and sealed container, separate from other voted ballots. And if they will be counted, count them separately. Now, what's odd about this, the Trump campaign asked the Supreme Court to do this. And he also referred this to the largest Supreme Court. What's odd about this is the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania had already told the counties to do this. The complaint of the Trump campaign is that was non-binding guidance, and they weren't sure the counties were doing it. But they really want to get this case into the Supreme Court. As the co-chair of the Lawyers for Trump committee said, we are counting on Amy Coney Barrett to come through, which probably the last thing Amy Coney Barrett wants to hear.
Sure, that's right.
But they did get a move by the Supreme Court today without a lot of substantial effect because basically the counties were doing it anyway.
Chair Moran, thanks. John Carr, how aggressive do you expect Trump and his legal team to be in the coming days facing these kinds of numbers?
Well, I think that the one case that's got some movement is the one that Terry just described. But keep in mind that this is about ballots that were mailed by Election Day and arrived in one of the 3 days afterwards. And the question is that the Supreme Court could potentially hear is whether or not those ballots should be counted. And the bottom line is our guidance from local election officials in Pennsylvania is there aren't many of those ballots. They are being segregated. And even when when they are accounted. It's unclear that even if they all went in Trump's direction, whether or not it would make much of a difference at all. So other than that, George, there's a lot of bluster, but there is nothing substantive that has been put forward by the president's legal team that would change the trajectory of this election.
John Carl, thanks very much. Finally, Nate Silver at 538, you're digging into the numbers. Does Donald Trump have any plausible path back to the White House?
I don't personally think so, because also, I mean, first of all, he'd have to win several states where he's behind, including Pennsylvania, which I think is maybe the hardest one of all. There's a big kind of nerd fight online about these provisional ballots, whether they would help Trump or Biden. I think they're more likely to help Biden because there are more of them in Philadelphia, for example, than in these red counties that have reported the results so far. But the point is, Trump is going to need a lot of help in Pennsylvania. He's currently down by 20,000 votes. You have 100,000 more mail ballots that are going about 3-1 for Biden. That would make him 70,000 votes behind. He's not going to win the provisional ballots by 85 points, which is what you would need to do to actually claw back that deficit. So I am sorry, I do not see the math for Trump in Pennsylvania.
And for all of you who want details on the nerd fight, go to 538.com. We'll be right back.
It's winning.
Tuesday morning on the day before the CMA Awards. Wake up from now.
All right, let me check my chat and see what's going on here. Not Obi, I said the chat. Oh, crap. Come on. All right, pop chat out. Copy. Well, y'all, I estimate another 20 minutes for the phone cut. I estimate another 20 minutes for the phone cut. Even though it's on a power bank. It's still not charging fast. What's going on? Would it charge faster if I put it directly on it? It's on the power bank. I don't know why they ain't charging. But we'll have to wait and see. Alright, we got the chat out, right? Let's take a look. Let me type something. Oops. Alright. So the chat is fixed. Alright. Now it said Big Doug, oh knows. Breaking election news, recount of votes in Georgia. We already said that. That's not new news. We heard that about 5 hours ago. Yeah, that was 9 hours ago. But okay, we'll watch it.
He's finally asleep.